Everyone, Michelle Lynn here. I'm talking about this book again, Mastering Stand Up. I've nearly finished talking about it. Today we're going to cover off the last of the types of stand up comedy sections. So we have the comic flaw, edgy stand up, character stand up, speciality stand up, and then very quickly at the end, I'm going to go into ad libbing. So to start off with, let me talk about the comic flaw. So the comic flaw is when you're a comedian and you have a flaw which is super obvious to the audience, but it's not super obvious to you. So Stephen writes in his book, when a comedian creates a persona that embodies a shortcoming, this form of stand-up comedy is called the comic flaw. So there are two keys to creating this form of stand-up. The first key is that the comedian must not be aware of his or her flaw. So they don't know that they're cheap, or they don't know that they're dumb, or they don't know that they're like bigoted, or they don't know that, you know, whatever it is that they are, that they're personifying, they are completely oblivious to the fact that they are like that, right? And so the second key is that if the shortcoming is malicious, like bigotry, that it has to be clear in the writing that it's being held up for ridicule. So it's there to be laughed at and not taken at face value. Otherwise, the audience is going to be really, really mad and they're going to be super angry, right? So he says Sarah Silverman is one of her generation's most skilled comic floor comedians, and her persona is that of blatantly bigoted and insensitive. Her persona is one of a blatantly is well, there, can't speak today. Her persona is that of a blatantly bigoted and insensitive person who is so unaware of those flaws that she is hilariously mystified and offended when confronted with them. So he has this great example of a joke that she wrote, um, which I'll go through. And so she has this joke and she says, I used to go out with a guy who's half black who totally broke up with me because I'm a fucking loser. And, sorry, I just heard myself say that. I'm such a pessimist. I have the worst attitude. He's half white and he totally broke up with me. And then she goes through this thing, right? But, when she talks about the delivery of this joke, including her look of cluelessness when everyone's like starts laughing, it makes it clear that her and her bigotry are what we've been invited to laugh at. So, obviously she wants to make it really, really obvious that she's joking, under all of that persona. Otherwise, people are going to be confused and they're going to probably be offended. So, comic floor comedians have two guns in their comedic arsenal. So, they can get audiences to laugh with them and they also can get audience to laugh at them. Which is a great, it's great when people, I have this, one of my favorite comedians is a guy, John Cruikshank, who's Australian. He's so funny. I really, really like him. And he's super clueless. Like, he's just, if you look him up, everyone probably thinks that he is really dumb and kind of clueless and kind of like, just very simple, but he's so smart and so funny. And that's just his persona on stage. And he's really great. I would recommend everyone to look him up. He's one of my favorites. He's really, really funny. And I love it because he's just so clueless. He just has these things which is totally wrong, but when he says that he thinks like he's acting out like he's right, and so the audience obviously thinks he's hilarious because they're like, look at this guy, he's an idiot. Like, what is he talking about? Which brings me to my last point on the comic flaw, which is that audiences love comedians who master the comic flaw, in part because their vulnerability is so out there. So they have no attempt to disguise their flaw because they don't even know that they have it, right? So this creates a persona which is very human and identifiable. And then they also enjoy the feeling of feeling superior to a flawed comedian because we know them better than they know themselves, right? So it's just enjoyable for the audience to watch. And I personally love that sort of style of humor. Um, so the second and third topics I won't really go into. It's character stand up, edgy stand up, and speciality stand up. And basically these are all um, types of humor. Well, I guess the character and a speciality one, it's basically about you really need to be committed to the role. So for character stand up, you can't be half the role, half not the role. You just have to be 100% into what the role is. I don't know if you guys know Dame Edna. She's a very famous comedian. Back in Sydney, who it's basically this guy Barry Humphries who dresses up as this very like kind of like grandmotherly, but also very kind of cool and like glitzy older woman, and he does this whole act. But she's always when he's Dame Edna, he's always Dame Edna. He doesn't switch between Barry Humphries and Dame Edna. He's like 100% that person. And I'm sure you can think of other comedians who play a character, and whenever they're the character, that's it. They're not half the person, half the real person, and then half the character. So that's basically what Stephen says about character stand up, is that you have to be 100% committed to the role. Same with a speciality comedy, like if you're rapping or if you're playing the piano, if you're playing the flute, you can't just be good at that. You also have to make it funny. So sometimes I do comedic raps, and I really like my comedic raps because I love hip hop. So whenever I try to do them, I always try to make sure that they're funny. So they can't just be good raps, they also have to be funny as well. Or if you're playing the piano, you can't just play the piano really well, you have to make the songs funny or whatever it is that you're doing. So obviously, you have to make sure that you're good at the thing, or you could not be good at it, but you could think you're good at it, and that could be like an example of the comic flaw. But whatever it is, you have to be like you have to make sure that it's funny as a skill, and then when you add it to the comedy, then the overall thing is very funny. And then he talks about edgy stand up, which is kind of talking about these taboo topics that people might feel uncomfortable talking about. And what he says is like basically, when you're addressing these sort of kind of taboo topics like, sex or drugs or, even things like child abuse or pedophilia or things that are really like make the audience feel on edge, you really need to obviously make sure that it's funny the way that you write it, but he says that you're doing it because you really believe in something, right? You're not just trying to put it out there as a way of like shock humor. You have to do it because you really feel like you're trying to spread a message about something that you believe in. So Stephen writes in his book that all the comedians that do this edgy humor, they don't just do it because it's edgy and it like has a shock factor. They do it because they have, genuine convictions about righting wrongs and exposing absurdity, hypocrisy, and mendacity amongst the powerful and exalted. So what gives edgy humor the best bite is that behind the shockingly outrageous jokes are deeply held convictions. Um, and he also says the really great edgy stand-ups shock audiences as a means of jolting them into confronting inconvenient truths about themselves and their ways of living. Um, and one of comedy's greatest writers, the French playwright, and I'm gonna probably screw up his name, Molière, instructs us that the duty of comedy is to correct men by entertaining them. So that's really great. Like that's some of the times when I'm saying my jokes. Like I have this joke which some people love and some people hate, and it's basically when I talk about when girls go out at the end of the night, everyone says, okay, like get home safe, message me when you get home so I know you've gotten home safe, which is helpful. But I think what would be more helpful is if guys got together at the end of their nights and they were like, okay, don't rape anyone on the way home tonight, like make sure you text me when you get home so that you can tell me that you haven't raped anyone. Right? And people either love that joke or they hate that joke. But my point is, we shouldn't be telling girls to get home safe, Like, that is not what is happening. Like, people are attacking girls, whether it be men or women, and that, the message is not for the girls to have to try to take care of themselves. The message is, in general, like, be a good person and don't attack people. So, whatever. I'm saying that joke. I don't care. I really like it. And that's what I believe in. So, to finish off, I want to talk really quickly about ad-libbing, which is not, he doesn't really talk about how to ad-lib, but he more talks about the fact that when you're seeing a comedian and they're so funny, you think that they're just doing it the first time or like for the first time, or they might seem really natural on stage. They might even forget their lines a little bit and then come back from it and then do their set. And a lot of people think that when comedians are on stage, I don't know, like maybe times have changed and they're more clued in on what comedians do. But I know for a fact that when I used to be in university and I used to watch the Melbourne Comedy Festival, there was a guy who's very like abstract. His name is Ross Noble. He's really funny. He's very abstract in the way that he says his comedy, and it sounds like he's just making up on the spot. Um, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, and don't sue me, Ross, if you're listening to this, but I'm pretty sure that's his set, right? Like he's got it all written down, but when he presents it, it sounds like it's very like spontaneous. So basically, in the ad-libbing chapter, Stephen talks about how you have to practice your set so much that it sounds like you're doing it for the first time, even if you've done it for the 50th or 200th time. And that's really what it is. Like you really gotta, like okay. So he basically says the impossible thing that stand-up appear to be able to do is be spontaneously funny night after night. It's like magic. Because it is magic. It's a trick. The trick is to learn how to deliver written material in a way that seems so spontaneous the audience thinks you're making it up on the spot. And that's really hard to do because you gotta memorize it and you gotta practice it so much. It's so fluid that it sounds like so smooth. And that's something that I really need to keep in mind as well. And I feel like for me, I don't like doing a lot of gigs because I don't. Sometimes if I've done my joke a couple of times, I'm like, I don't want to have to do that joke again. I'm kind of like sick of that joke. But when you think about people that are on the road, like for example, like Ali Wong, who I know she's doing a big tour at the moment, and she's hitting all these different states, and like sometimes she has to do 2 shows a night, and she's got like, she's going to all these different states for like I don't know how long, 6 months or something like that. And she's got to do the same set every single night. It's not like she's making up a new set every night. She's going to be doing the same set, I think. Also, don't sue me, Ali, if you're watching this. But yeah, you just gotta practice it. And I think that's something that I just gotta toughen up and just be like, well, everyone's gotta do it. Like Ali Wong does it, Trevor Noah does it, Jerry Seinfeld does it. They do the same set every night. You just gotta practice it so that it gets so smooth and fluent that it sounds like a new set. And that's something that I really need to work on. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like I feel like a lot of people maybe they don't like, maybe they're in my boat where they think I don't want to have to do this because I don't like saying the same tricks. But I think what if you get past that and you realize that all the greats have to do that, and that's how they're on a tour, they have to do it. Then hopefully it'll make you feel a little bit better about reusing your material as well. So that's all we have time for. I know this one was a little bit longer, but I hope that you appreciate it. And I'm going to close out in the next couple of videos about writing and performing your set. So stay tuned and have a great week. Thank you. Bye.